Korean food is one of my all-time favorite cuisines. I love it so much. And since I don't even want to think about bringing 2 toddlers on a 14-hour flight right now, I'm whipping up a Korean-inspired feast right here on the farm. For dessert, I am making my orange bars with toasted sesame crust. They've got a buttery, nutty base and a citrusy custard filling. They're a twist on the traditional lemon bar and an ode to my love of all things sesame in Korean desserts. To get started on my crust, I'll combine my dry ingredients in my food processor. 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of sugar, and 1/4 cup of cornstarch, which will help yield a tender crust. This is essentially a shortbread jazzed up with toasted sesame and mandarin zest. A couple of good pinches of salt, and then 2 teaspoons of orange zest. Now I'm using mandarin oranges. We always have them around because the girls eat like 6 of them each a day. I particularly love them because they're extra sweet. Bars in the Midwest are a major food group. So this is my slightly subtler version of a lemon bar. The orange cuts down on the tartness, and if you say the words toasted sesame crust all next to each other, I am sold. I'll get this onto my processor and pulse just to combine. This is 1 cup of cold unsalted butter cut into cubes so that it can incorporate evenly. I'll scatter this in. It's really important that this butter stays as cold as possible so you get as tender of a crust as possible. I'll get the lid back on and then continue on pulsing to incorporate the butter, and then once it starts to form larger clumps, that's how I know it's just about ready. So now that the butter is incorporated with the dry ingredients, it's starting to clump up, and it still looks crumbly in my food processor, but if you grab a handful of it and squeeze it together, it'll stick into a dough. Smelling delicious already. I'll eyeball in 1/4 cup of toasted sesame seeds. Sesame and orange together is a match made in dessert bar heaven. I'll give this just a couple of more pulses to incorporate the sesame seeds. I don't want to break them up too much. Looks beautiful. I've got a 9x13 pan that's greased and lined on the bottom and sides with parchment paper. I like to add these little wings, which is gonna make it easier to lift them out of the pan when they're done baking. I'll pile this in. I'll press the crust all over the bottom. It'll be a thin layer and a delicious base for the orange custard. I'll make sure to go all the way to the corners and get it as evenly packed down as I can. I mean, no offense to basic lemon bars, but whoa. This is ready to bake. I'll bake it at 350 degrees for about 23 minutes until it's golden around the edges. And in that time, I'll make the filling. This filling is citrusy and custardy, and it all comes together right in the food processor, just like the crust did. How convenient. I've got 6 whole eggs already in here, and I'm zesting in 2 teaspoons of mandarin zest. What I love about a custard-based bar like this is that it is really satisfying without being overly rich and heavy. It's really an ideal vehicle for citrus flavor. 1.5 cups of sugar. And then I'll blend this up until it's combined and creamy. And then the zest will kind of break down and infuse the sugar with all of its flavor. Great. Now that it's smooth, I'll sprinkle in 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, which will help the crust stay together in a nice cohesive texture, and it'll also help it firm up. A bit of kosher salt to bring out this beautiful mandarin flavor. I'll blend that. And I'll process 3/4 cup of mandarin juice and then 1/4 cup of lemon juice. So it's a nice balance of sweet and tart. And that's it for the filling. It's nice and smooth and smells delightful. Let me get the crust out of the oven. I'm smelling that toasted sesame. Those are the golden brown edges that I'm looking for. And I can still see those flecks of orange and sesame. I'll pour this right on top. Just flood it with deliciousness. Back into the oven it goes at 350 degrees for 20 minutes until it's just set, and then I'll let it cool, firm it up in the refrigerator, dust with powdered sugar, and slice into bars. I'm really excited. I am gonna chunk these. Look at all those layers. I've gotta take a bite. Mmm. Those are really delicious. That buttery sesame crust and that creamy citrusy filling, they come together in the center and get a little chewy. Aren't you glad these bars exist? I am.